Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. Now is a great time of year to think ahead and look at options for future crops in your fields. Today, SUNUP's Dave Deacon and our Extension Cropping System Specialist Josh Lofton show us a demonstration plot on seeding methods.
We've been fortunate lately to get a lot of rain across the state, and that means the wheat's growing. And Josh, you've kind of done a demonstration here at EFA of two different planting styles. We have the traditional drill, but then we also have another way.
Yeah, that's right, Dave. What we wanted to do here is a little bit earlier this year. We had all the ag extension agents out across the state here in Stillwater, and you know, we've been asked for quite a few years is how do our planting practices, you know, as compared to our drill planted, our traditional planted, if you will, how does it look compared to something that is done more in our forage dominated areas where we broadcast and just incorporate and we let the wheat come up that way. If we get it to yield, we might run a combine across it, but yeah, the big focus was how much are we available for the cattle, how quickly was it available, especially with the fall and the early winter we had.
Now, speaking of that, we have had a pretty early winter. We've had the rain. How are things looking for Oklahoma wheat right now?
Well, both wheat and canola look good. You know, we did have a lot cooler conditions early, as well as our planting was a lot further delayed because of some of our summer crops, some of the heavier rainfall. So we saw a lot of the wheat specifically, but both the wheat and canola go a little bit later than we like. So heading into some of our cold spells at the very beginning of the fall, we were a little concerned with them. We saw a lot of wheat fields and canola fields that were more bare ground than they were fields. But we're actually seeing with these periods of 60 degrees followed by some periods of cool temperatures, we're actually seeing quite a bit of the wheat as well as the canola kind of flush itself out, get a little bit more canopy to it. And I'd say overall our winter crops look really good. And this is highlighted by right over here, and you can kind of see we actually took on this wheat, we actually took our forage samples all the way to the ground just before Christmas. And even just during that period, we've seen that the wheat has been able to fully, you know, I don't want to say fully recover, but it's been able to recover, get a lot more biomass development from it, and it's hard to even see the spot to where we've clipped that. So both the wheat and the canola are enjoying this winter, these good moisture conditions, the good 60-degree days followed by some periods of cool weather like we're experiencing this morning is really setting us into a good spot.
Now, coming up here in about a month, I guess folks are going to have an opportunity to talk with you guys about some of the crops going on across the state. What's been traditionally the No-Till Conference has a new name.
Yeah, so what we're doing is the No-Till Conference, and the folks that have previously put on the No-Till Conference, including our NRCS around the state, have joined forces with our commodity groups to what we're calling the All Crops Conference. And we're going to be talking about some really big topics as well as some commodity specific topics. So we have it broken down to where we have a general session typically in the morning, and then we go into our commodity talks in the afternoon. Scott Alls from USDA coming and talking about feral hogs. And then, like I said, we have all these commodity specific talks as well.
Okay, thank you much, Josh.
Thanks, Dave.
And for more information on the All Crops Conference, visit our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
Welcome to the weekly Mesonet weather report. Wet conditions continue to persist in the state this week. I've heard more "how muddy is it" jokes lately than I care to recall. The one-day average 4-inch plant available water map continues to show us at or near 100%. 100% would be an indicator of a soil that is fully saturated. One of the factors keeping us muddy is the lack of sunshine. As a whole, the state has been very cloudy over the past several months. Looking at December, we see the entire state, except the Panhandle region, received less sunshine than normal. This was as much as 12% below normal in Altus and Jay. January has continued this darker than normal trend. The dark fill areas shown here would be the normal percent sunshine for the state. The blue line is what we actually have seen since the first of the month. These cloudy conditions mean we have higher humidity levels and lower daily high temperature numbers than expected. For example, on Tuesday, the forecasted highs were about 10 degrees more than what we actually received due to the lack of sunshine. Next up is Gary with even more rain information along with some spring weather forecast.
Thanks, Wes, and good morning, everyone. Now, with the great news last week of complete removal of drought and dry conditions across the state on the drought monitor, we're going to take a look at the rainfall so far, or at least the moisture from snowfall and rainfall to begin 2019. So as we look at the Mesonet total map for the first couple of weeks of 2019, we see some pretty good moisture from south central up through northeastern Oklahoma and scattered about central and also southeast Oklahoma. Now, we do have lower amounts across the western half of the state, but as we look at the percent of normal rainfall map for that same time period, we see that for most of these areas, this amount of moisture for the dry part of January is actually a tremendous amount, from 100 to 200 to up to 500% of normal for some parts of the state. Now, as we take a look at the future for the February through April outlooks from the Climate Prediction Center, we see increased odds of above normal precipitation across the western half of the state, but especially across the far western panhandle. Now, for temperatures, we see equal chances of above, below, or near normal conditions. So basically climatological values in those areas. So with the great moisture we've had thus far and the good forecast, the Climate Prediction Center doesn't see any drought developing, but we will continue to keep a close eye on it. That's it for this time, and we'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
Kim Anderson, our crop marketing specialist, is here now. Kim, why don't we just start this week with an overview of what's happening in the markets?
Well, there's just not much happening. You look at wheat, last week we closed at $4.99 on the KC March contract. The range is $4.94 to $5.03 on the bottom side of that, and wheat prices are basically just moving sideways. Corn, same story. We closed at $3.78 last week, $3.72 to $3.88, narrow range there, sideways patterns. Soybeans is probably the only crop that it does have an uptrend. The last few week and a half or so, we have been slightly lower on prices, but on the long run, it's an upward trend. Beans closed last week at $9.10, $8.91 to $9.10 range, all narrow ranges and just not much happening.
Well, when do you think something will start happening?
Well, that's a tough question because I think it's going to depend on foreign countries. You look at soybeans, corn, you're talking about China. When are they going to come in and buy U.S. beans? You got Brazil, they're harvesting their second crop. They got weather problems down there. So the information coming from there can have a big impact. With wheat, you got Russia and Ukraine. Russia continues to find wheat to export. You got Ukraine that's in that export market. We need them to clean out their bins so that we can get some export demand. And then you've got Argentina and their corn crops. So something's going to happen. When something happens negative or positive from the import side in those other countries.
Now that's kind of the next question. When does it matter? When's that kind of crucial time in terms of strategy and planning?
Well, for most producers, it doesn't matter right now. There's nothing going on. If you've got grain in storage, wheat, corn, or cotton or something like that, of course it matters what price is doing. But you're not going to be making any wheat marketing decisions until we come out of dormancy in February to early March. The corn, bean, cotton, grain, sorghum, sesame decisions going to be made in March, April. So I think the important time periods is a month or two down the road.
Well, let's kind of think about that. What is the market offering for those 2019 crops?
Well, if you're looking right now and put a pencil to things, right now you can forward contract wheat in most of Oklahoma for around $4.75. You get to southern Oklahoma, it's around $4.50. Corn you can forward contract at $3.50, $3.99 in southern Oklahoma. Sorghum $3.45 at both north and south Oklahoma, and soybeans around $8.30 to $8.40.
Okay, well, keep us posted. Maybe something will be happening soon.
Next week.
Okay, we'll see you then. Thanks a lot, Kim.
We've got our annual Red River Crops Conference that's coming up January 23rd and 24th. And this was going to be our 6th Crops Conference this year. And we're very proud of the Red River Crops Conference. The conference is structured where we have one day that's committed totally to cotton. But we're very excited to have Dr. Campeacci come down and kind of give us an update, what's going on at the National Cotton Council, what they're looking at, both from a marketing strategy, international strategy. And then we've got cotton fertility this year. There's been a lot of work going on with cotton fertility. I think it's going to be a good topic area in terms of practical application for this year. We will start the day on the January 24th with wheat and canola production updates, things that we need to look at in season, being as those are winter crops. We're going to talk about wheat herbicide updates. We've talked about guar and sesame over the past several years, and it's been a good production topic. You know, to register for the conference, it's $25. We've kept it very affordable for guys to be able to get into the conference. It is indeed a crops conference where we center in on trying to help our producers plan for success in Southwest Oklahoma and the Texas Rolling Plains.
Well, we've seen a lot of rain throughout the state, and Brian, what does that mean for the soil?
So with all this rain, we have it coming down, we have a couple things happening. Our mobile nutrients, the nitrate, sulfate, chloride, they are in the soil solution, so when the soil solution moves down or out, it will follow. So more than likely, we've had a significant amount of nitrate movement, the NO3 and the sulfur movement, the chloride movement, down in the profile or out of the profile. So those things are going to be lacking as we get into the springtime and green up, is that we're going to be low on nitrogen, probably low on sulfur too. Our immobile nutrients, because we have so much soil moisture and the moisture's cold, we're probably going to see some deficiency potential in phosphorus, because when the soils are cool and moist, the plant roots can't get to it. Same way with potassium. So if we're marginal or low on those two nutrients, as we get warming up, we'll probably see some deficiency symptomologies on those. However, once we get warmed up, once the soils get going, the roots start growing better, we're going to see that root exploration, we'll see P and K deficiencies go. And once organic matter starts breaking down, once the soil temperatures warm up, we're more likely to see some of the sulfur deficiencies go away as that organic matter is breaking down and releasing.
So with all that, what does that mean for wheat and canola?
So with wheat and canola right now, we'll just start with canola real quickly. We're going to need to be getting on our canola as soon as we can before we go into to bolting with our nitrogen top dress. And I'd definitely be looking at some sulfur, because more than likely we've leached most of that sulfur out. So let's make sure we have the sulfur on. For our wheat, same scenario. On our high yielding wheats, I'd be thinking about some sulfur, but first and foremost, we need to take care of our nitrogen issues. We're going to be lower on nitrogen, and we need to be taking care of that. And you know, it's not going to be too late. Everybody's worried. Typically, they're top dressing right now. I know it's wet, but we can still get on it. We've had the research show we can delay that. With this cold weather that's coming up in the future, if the ground's frozen enough, or at least hard enough to get across, it's not a bad idea to go ahead and get your fertilizer out while you have some solid ground. So have it out there and get it starting to incorporate, so when we get a green up, that nitrogen's ready to go.
So throughout the winter, we've had these days where it's 25 degrees, then 60 degrees, and that fluctuation. What does that mean for the soil and for the wheat and canola in our winter crops?
So it kind of gets the things start moving a little bit, but not rapidly. So the wheat is perfectly made crop where it'll take advantage of a couple warm days and start growing. And on the soil wise, our soils are stayed cool, and so with these warm-ups, they get going a little bit. The microbial activity kind of kicks up a little bit, but not really. So the plants are growing in the few days they can, but the soil's not really releasing. So what we'll see is the probability of maybe some responsiveness. Wheat's going to start growing, which also means we have still a great opportunity to get enriched strips out. And I'd still recommend, even if you're top dressing in the next couple weeks, go ahead and put out an enriched strip for later, because we just don't know how much nitrogen might have been lost during this wet season. So even, like I said, even if you're top dressing right now, go ahead and put out an enriched strip and watch it, because it may pay dividends as we get closer to hollow stem or into flag leaf if you're wanting to make a protein application.
All right, thanks, Brian. Brian Arnall, Precision Nutrient Management Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Last week on the Cow-Calf Corner, we visited with you about the 3 stages of calving. Now, stage 2 is the one that we didn't spend enough time on. Stage 2 is where really all the action is. That's when the calf is delivered. We define stage 2 as first beginning when the water bag is expelled, or in a lot of cases, it may be when we first see the appearance of baby calf's feet, and stage 2 ends then when the calf is completely delivered. Now, how long is stage 2 if this cow is going to deliver this calf unassisted and everybody ends up a healthy mother and a healthy baby calf? Research has been done looking at this pretty carefully, both in Montana at a USDA station and here at Oklahoma State University. If you look at this particular table, you'll see the results of that, where they carefully timed the length of stage 2, the time from the appearance of the water bag until the calf was delivered. In the case of mature cows in the USDA study, the average length of time was 22 minutes. It was longer for first calf heifers, those that had never had a calf before, hadn't had that birth canal stretched. In the case of first calf heifers, both in the Montana study and here at Oklahoma State University, the time was almost identical on the average. 54 minutes in one case, 55 minutes in the other. So I think this gives us a really good guideline as to when we want to intervene with a cow, or especially a first calf heifer, as we're watching them during this upcoming calving season. If stage 2 isn't taking place, if she isn't making real progress in an hour, in the case of that first calf heifer, we probably need to get her in and examine her and see if there's a problem that we can solve. If it's a problem that we can't handle real quickly, we need to call our local large animal veterinarian and get professional help. In the case of that older cow, it's going to happen in about a half of an hour or a little less. So that gives us our guideline as to how long to watch her. Now, people may ask, why not just let them wait, let them go as long as they need to? Well, we know from other research that if this part of stage 2 is allowed to go on an extended period of time, we can have some real health problems with that baby calf. Perhaps he'll be acidotic, won't be able to take in the colostrum as early as we need him to be. Also, we know from research data that extended stage 2s of calving will cause cows to be slower to come back into estrus, to come back to have a chance to rebreed for next year. So those are two issues that we need to consider as we're thinking about how long we're going to wait before we actually bring her in and give her some assistance. Remember, stage 2 of calving, about an hour in that first calf heifer, half an hour, a little less in that older cow. I think that's a good situation to remember as we go through this calving season. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
Seems like the show we've talked a lot about cold, wet conditions, and Derrell, that's just kind of how the winter's been this year. Is it impacting the cattle markets?
It will probably show up as some measurable impacts as we go forward. I don't know that we've seen it yet, but we have a lot of the country has been hit with either heavy snow, and that's affecting a lot of feedlot areas. Many other areas that didn't necessarily get snow but got rain, and we have a lot of wet, sloppy conditions that's affecting both feedlots as well as cattle out in the country.
What are you seeing in the cattle and beef markets going into 2019?
Well, as best we know at this point, we're still kind of trying to get a beat on the market. The prices we have, unfortunately, we're still getting prices at this point, are relatively good. We've seen some support, and again, bad weather is actually a short-term positive for fed cattle markets. It delays those cattle reaching weight and going into the market. So we're seeing relatively strong markets there. I think from a meat standpoint, we're still trying to kind of get a bead on what the post-holiday period is, how good was meat movement, and that's going to set the stage then for beef demand here in the first quarter. So we're not 100% sure, but it looks generally pretty positive at this point.
We've been dealing with the government shutdown here lately, and you're a guy that needs numbers. How is that impacting what you do?
Well, you know, there's nothing more pathetic than an economist with no numbers to work with. So, you know, I mean, I miss it, but more importantly, the market misses it and producers miss it. And that's what's important. What I do is just to try to, you know, help get that information to them and provide some analysis to go with that. So, you know, these effects accumulate. And so the longer we go on, we may eventually get all of these reports, but with the delays and there's a lot of unknowns right now. So we missed many crop reports in January. We didn't send out the cattle surveys that normally go out in early January to do the monthly cattle on feed report, and more importantly, to do the January 1 cattle inventory report. We only get that once a year. We may get a partial mid-year update at times, but that January cattle inventory report is a very important one that really gives us a summary of what really did happen last year and sets the stage for what we can expect this year. So we really need that report. It will be delayed. I presume at some point we will get it.
What does all of that mean for the Oklahoma ag producer?
Well, I think right now, obviously, we're working with a more uncertain environment. We're probably going to see a little more volatility in these markets. Again, fortunately, we are still getting price data. What we're missing is the production data, if you will, the survey-based data that NASS does, those kinds of things. And so I wouldn't make a lot of drastic changes in your plans at this point. You know, if you're thinking about doing some things, I probably would hold off a little bit until we do get caught up a little bit on this information and verify that what you were thinking is what you want to do. But I wouldn't react terribly negatively right now. Just kind of stay the course and hopefully we get back on track here.
Okay, thank you much. Derrell Peel, Livestock Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Hi, welcome to Shop Stop. We want to spend a little bit of time talking about AC tools and polarity.
Okay, what is polarity? You've got a plug and it's got 2 prongs, for example, and you've got a plug that's got 3 prongs, for example, and the polarity is determined by which one is the neutral and which one is the hot.
So you want to make sure that when you're plugging stuff in, that with your plugs as they match like this, that it'll only go into the outlet in one way.
Correct, because one of these spades is wider than the other one, and if you go to your recep, well, one of the slots is larger than the other slot, and that will only let it go in one way, and this larger slot is your neutral.
And so the important thing to remember is when you're working on stuff that we're always going to switch the hot line off, not the neutral.
Right. So let's say that this cord got damaged and was cut right here, and the plug was gone. How could we determine whether or not which was neutral and which was hot on this? If you look at the cord, it has ribs on one side and smooth on the other. That would determine that the rib side is the neutral side, and the non-rib side, the smooth side, is what we'd call the hot side. So then you could reattach a new plug to it.
Yeah, and so these are set like that. If you've got the plug with the ground on it, then it's only going to go into the outlet one way, and then the ground plug is going to dictate which one goes into the neutral slot.
So you've got 3 prongs and 2 prongs, and you'll notice on some of your power tools they'll have a 3-prong or 2-prong, and the 2 prongs can only go on what we call a double insulated tool. And the double insulated tool is signified by that double square right there. If your tool has that, that means it's double insulated.
So there's a few tips on polarity and how tools are wired. We'll see you next week on Shop Stop.
We've had the longest federal government shutdown in U.S. history, and here to talk about what it might mean for Oklahoma ag producers is Amy Hagerman, our ag policy specialist. And Amy, it's been an interesting few weeks, hasn't it?
It definitely has. You know, this was some uncertainty that we really didn't need right now, coming off of sort of the Farm Bill debate and the trade wars in 2018. This has caused some uncertainty for producers and for a lot of other people right now.
It definitely has. When you kind of hone in, it's affected a lot of things, but when you hone in specifically for agriculture, what kind of guidance are you offering for farmers and ranchers?
Yeah, absolutely. This is affecting several different areas for our farmers and ranchers. Sort of first and foremost, it's affecting the operations of the Farm Service Agency county offices, which is where a lot of people get their marketing loans, and they can't get in to set those processes in motion or to get payments off of those. We're coming into planting decision time. It's affecting paperwork that needs to go to lenders right now. So all of those things are affecting our agricultural producers during this shutdown. Another area is data. Producers need data on price expectations, and they can't get the data right now in order to prepare for this next season.
And this is a really, during this these winter months, it's a real planning time, really paperwork and organizing time. We talked about, FSA, USDA, what other agencies might impact our producers?
Yeah, absolutely. Recently in the news, it was announced that part of the IRS is coming back. But of course, there's going to be some backlog there as they come back and try to process some things. For our ag producers too, you've got a combined effect. With USDA offices closed, they can't get their 1099s in order to complete their taxes as early as they might be able to. So this is going to create some crunch for our farmers, for our farm accountants, as we get closer to the deadlines for tax season as well.
So what can we do? You kind of feel helpless, really.
Yeah, I think really just have some patience. As we work through this process, go ahead and move forward with your planning as best you can. Get all your paperwork together and be ready to move. And then just have some patience with those agents whenever they come back to work, because they're going to have quite a backlog of things. Also, there have been some extended deadlines, and that's going to help as well. If you weren't able to get your market facilitation payment application in prior to the government shutdown, they're going to extend that deadline. Originally, it was January 15th, but they're going to extend it by the number of working days that the shutdown has gone on. So there will be some extended time frames to get some things in as well. And also, I think it's going to push back some deadlines for our Farm Bill programs as well. So there might be some additional time for decision making there.
Okay, so patience is the key.
Patience is the key.
Okay, well, keep us posted, Amy.
All right, thank you.
Thanks a lot. And that does it for SUNUP this week. We'll see you next time.